really needed. I've got Rachel Vaughan here, and I don't know how many courses you've run now. You'd be up to
I'm
three or
on my
four,
sixth one this time.
six course. So, those that don't know, Rachel's been running a psychic development course with a key focus on the ley lines. And yeah, again, for me, this was probably my last. I hadn't had a big aha moment for a long time, and being able to visibly spot these ley lines was such a big thing for me now. And then after listening to your previous interview with Julia, which I'll put under here as well.
Cool.
I don't know if you're going to go through much of that stuff, but if we if you extend on further from that, then people can watch that one first.
Yeah. Basically, that's a really good intro. I did a much more comprehensive intro into visibly being able to see ley lines in Max Lowen's Unbroken Summit, but that's under a paywall, so it makes it a bit harder.
Yeah,
And obviously, I go in way more in depth in the course. But this will give people a bit of a taste, and it's also focusing on a particular monument in or area in Australia that that needs some focus.
yeah. So I mean, we usually say this at the end, but for I think you've already sold out for your next round. Well, you're doing one now, aren't you? So
One now,
yeah,
yeah.
if people are really interested in this, how are you going to just keep running these every couple of months, or?
Yeah. So every second month. So I've got one coming up in May, another one in July. The one in July would be better for people in America. The one in May is pretty much for the UK, sort of, Europe, Australia, New Zealand sort of group. Yeah, so I'll just keep running it until I don't know, until people know about how to find them, I guess, and they won't need to keep coming to do a course. And
Yeah,
I'll
cool.
still be doing more and more of these interviews and showing people this way as well. It's impossible to do it comprehensively. So the aspect or the session that I do on ley lines in my course takes 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
And it's just like full on, you've done it. So yeah, it's only so
yeah.
much to squeeze into an interview.
I'll just say to anyone that watches it, you'll have a new appreciation for just being able to see them, and what it might open up in individuals, and then potentially how we can start working with these lines. Yeah, which is
Yeah, exactly. Which is the passion that I have at the moment. And I'll explain a little bit of that with the shares that I'm going to do today, because
yeah,
basically they get co-opted and they've been used for millennia for really dark purposes. And the proof of that is the Roman pagan sites or the ritual sites, sacrificial sites, were all on the crossings of major ley lines, so or larger ley lines. And all the Catholic churches in the UK were sat upon those old Roman pagan ritual sites, and they would use the sacrificial stones as part of the church foundation. And then
yeah,
they'd have to put, depictions of Roman pagan gods in the churches to actually bring the pagans in. So, a lot of the really old churches, you can see the evidence of it. So, it's interesting. Ley lines have been known by ancient people forever. Then somehow some sort of veil came over, in the last, say, 200 years where we weren't allowed to see them anymore or know that they were visible. Obviously, our original Australians know that they're visible. They call them song lines and dream lines, and they walk them. They literally walk them. So what happens with the ley lines is the plants and trees don't like to grow within them. It makes them, I don't know, uncomfortable or something. And so it creates a path in nature, which is like, a path of least resistance. Of course, you're going to walk on a path, especially in an American bush where you've got prickly acacia and all sorts of things that you want to try and get through. You'll go through the path that's open. Kangaroos love to use them. So, but it's interesting, I don't see a lot of birds around the layers. They seem to avoid them. And someone clever said to me recently it's because they use a form of magnetic location when they fly. So, that possibly is a reason. I was speaking to someone the other day who was, from the sound of it, in a dome centre in a crossing of quite large lays. In that conversation where she was outside, I heard one bird. And I said, I don't think it's a great place for you to be. Because she's sort of kind of living there at the moment. So, you don't want to live in these lines. They're not evil. The Hartman lines can make you sick over time, but you don't want to be living in them permanently.
Well, they're kind of, from what I was listening with you, they're kind of both dualistic and neutral at the same time. But yeah, I found it interesting when you said you went up Uluru and that it was completely quiet.
Completely quiet, not a sound, nothing. It was weird. And if you look at Uluru, you know, on Google Maps and stuff, or Google Earth, you can see there's trees and stuff around it, but there was no sound. And interestingly, the 20 odd people that I was up there with, they were all in groups. They all knew each other. I didn't know anybody else when I went up there, but nobody was speaking a word. It was weird. It was really weird. Yeah, very, very eerie, but also very, like, I felt this full-on reverence for the space that I was in.
Wow. I know I've mentioned, we'll get started. I just want to mention this one because it just triggered me, because I think I've told you that story when I was in Krakow in Poland, in the old town, and we went like 2 stories downstairs into this I don't know, like, yeah, just like an old bar, like in Old Town. And that, yeah, just reminded me, because when we went down there, we all felt really sick. Like, we felt this energy straight away. Me and 2 of my friends who, you know, they didn't talk about any of this sort of stuff. And that's what I remember. It was complete silence. And then we walked out. We didn't say a word to each other for a while, until my mate turned to me and said, what on earth was that? But that's what it was complete silence. So I wonder if that was on a way. But anyway, where do you want to start, Rachel? Do you want to get straight into it, or?
Yeah, I'll just start sharing and we'll get through. Cool. All right. So bear with me.
I'm not hosting, am I? Oh no, cool.
No. Okay. So as I go through, I might sort of come back to just looking at this screen, because you can see the portals are quite obvious on small pictures. So here we go. So
and also, Rachel, you've just brought this Alfred Watkins guy back to life, haven't you?
I can't stop talking about Alfred Watkins.
There's got to be some tie there, doesn't there? Like,
I reckon that. Well, there must be. Well, this guy lived in the UK in the early 19th century. So I don't know. I just have this real affinity with this particular book. When I was looking for information on ley lines, this is one of the first ones that sort of turned up, and then someone I love pointed out that, oh, well, that he's supposed to be like the expert, and it's like, oh, cool. Well, this just happens to be the first book that sort of turned up for me. And reading it just blew my mind, because so much of what I already felt and intuited about the ley lines that I've been seeing and photographing on the south coast of South Australia for the last 10 years was in the book. So, you know, I had noticed these mark stones in the particular locations that, you know, seemed to have real significance. He talks about mark stones. There were trees that had amazing significance that I won't go into today, because that's a whole different level, and that's something that I have to talk about in the course, because it's just so convoluted. But it relates to the spirit of the British countryside, which is what all the pagan ritual dedications were to the spirit of the forest. And the spirit of the forest is these entities that exist within the ley lines and show themselves in nature. And again, you know, that's a whole different topic that I couldn't possibly cover here, because we've got a limited time. But the reason why Alfred Watkins was so brilliant to me as well, and this is not in his book, is this particular piece of information. So he could see the leys as well. So, and I've got a few examples. We've already spoken about the Australian Aborigines. They obviously can see them. They sing on the lines, and also I believe they can hear the different frequency, as in it's a song line. But Watkins actually was riding on his horse, and he actually had this flood of ancestral memory where he actually saw a network of lines. Now, this was up on a hilltop. When I see them as beautiful, perfect circles of within nature, which is an unusual thing to find within nature, is a perfect circle. And it's the way the light refracts. And it's interesting, there's a couple of, just while people are reading this, there's a couple of quotes from another gentleman, Rory Duff, who I keep talking about as well. And he's written a guideline on finding ley lines. And I mean, that guidebook, it's so small, but it's just replete with information. I really highly recommend that one as well. But there's a couple of quotes that I just wanted to mention. On page 98 of that guideline, he says there's an understanding that vibrations create light, which in turn creates matter, which is a concept that Nikola Tesla supported. And if anybody's going to know stuff about this sort of thing, it's Tesla. His Wardenclyffe Tower was on the crossing of 2 major ley lines. Very intelligent man, obviously. And page 95, the idea that sound creates light is already being discussed amongst some scientists. So we may be finding that some kind of interference between the two exists at specific ultra low frequencies. And that's what I keep finding. You know, you can see the leys because of the light play. It's not just because the plants and trees are avoiding it. In places where the plants and trees are growing, you can still see it because the light's putting it out. So I've got some pretty cool examples. I wanted to include this as well because apparently the American Indians based their medicine wheel, which is a circle, around the ley lines because they knew that they followed a straight round line. And that's what I see. These are perfectly round. They usually hover about 2 inches off the ground. So you'll get ground covers typically, but you won't get a lot of trees and plants in the ley unless for some reason they just pack in. And in which case you can still see them if you're good at picking them up, if you learn how to pick them up. Okay. And just the corridors, basically. They're just these beautiful long corridors of various sizes as well. That's the other thing. Different areas will have larger leys. And one of the places that I'm going to be showing today has got some really big ones. And that's
this is why they like when they build structures, they'll build it on a mound as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's really interesting. And some of these, so where you get the leys crossing, you get what's called a dome or a big sphere or a portal. I call them portals. Some people call them vortexes. And these are the biggest dome centers. They build the most profound places of worship within, which we'll get into in a minute as well. So this is just a really lovely example of one of the places I've been visiting for the last 10 years or more, taking photographs and marveling at the anomaly of this sphere that's in this spot. So just pay attention to this ground cover because there's a couple of shots that I'm going to be taking here or showing here. So there's actually a circle here that I photographed over 10 years with different cameras. It still keeps showing itself up. Sometimes it's slightly smaller, slightly bigger at other times. And that does, the leys can fluctuate in frequency, so they can get more profound on certain dates and larger.
Right.
Yeah, which Duff talks about as well, but he won't give me the dates. I think he's talking about the equinoxes and solstices when they all seem to resonate together, but he didn't give the dates in the book. I've got to buy the next book.
You'll have to go take some pictures on equinox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't seem terribly obvious in this picture, but I'll show a tile where I've taken a series of photos over several years and you can see the comparison. So this next shot I'm going to show, just pay attention again to the Muntree ground cover. So now I'm actually in the portal space and I'm looking in this particular direction. And over here is one of the leys that feeds in, and it's quite a large one. A lot of them are really only about two meters across, but they get bigger and bigger. So this one's a big one. So again, you can see the light play. It's showing itself.
Oh, that's clear as day. And people that can't, if you can't see these straight away, like what it's like the subconscious mind. Once you see it, you'll see it. You'll never
Once
not
you
see
see it, you can't stop seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing. So according to Duff, there's not a square kilometre on the face of the earth that doesn't have at least one of these lines in it, which means you don't have to go out to some, do a pilgrimage to one of these big sacred sites to see them. They're everywhere. You just got to go out in nature to find them. They're more obvious in endemic scrub because you don't have people going out and putting rows of trees, where, you put rows of trees in, you're not going to see the natural way that things grow to avoid these sorts of energies. So this is the tile that I wanted to show as a comparison, and it's small for a reason. So I just wanted to make that small for a reason because, again, you can see there's this light play that's creating this sphere in this space, which I've marked on this side.
Yeah.
And again, these photos were taken, that's 2023, August 2023, December 2022, and this one's way back in April, either 2015 or 2016, I'm not sure. Different times of the year. Obviously, it's a deciduous tree sitting here, so you've got different lights, different times of day, different cameras, but the anomaly is still there. So
if they're changing in size, it's almost like if you saw them as like like a blood or arteries or highways of the Earth's body, that they're like contracting and
yeah, exactly.
It would
And
make
that's what they are. They're the meridians. So the ley lines are the meridians of the Earth, and where the really significant points of the largest leys that cross are considered the chakra points. And Rory Duff does show that the larger leys are called dragon lines. And as I've said in multiple interviews now, we only had 3 pairs of dragon lines up until 2017, and then another one appeared in 2017, another in 2018, another in 2019. So suddenly there was this massive influx of profound energy on the Earth, and that coincided with this awakening that's occurred. and Duff does talk about that too, that the
Amazing.
fluctuations of these frequencies creates, and it relates to a universal consciousness. And that's what I see the ley lines as. They are the repository of the Akashic record, which is a record of all events, thoughts, actions on Earth with all living things. So this is your photo. This is Bendigo.
Yeah.
I love this because it's such a great example. Look at that. Look at that. It's so friggin' obvious. You can't not see that. So I've marked it for those who, haven't done this technique before. One thing that you can do is let your eyes go slightly out of focus, because you will be able to pick up on it more easily with out of focus vision. But look at that. I mean, it's just spectacular. So, and you did that walk and talk, which was brilliant because you showed it. And, the reaction and the responses from that was fabulous, because a lot of people
Well,
do.
I got to thank you for that, because this is the spot that you kept pointing out and I couldn't
Yeah.
see them. And then I went back to Bendigo and I'm like, oh, I can see it. I can actually see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I must have
when you
like
see it, when you actually see them in nature and not just the picture, it's a whole different, it's a whole different level.
Well, you get those rushes of, energy through your body because you realize, oh my God, it's like, whoa,
And
seriously, right
that's
there.
following the
That's the quartz line.
southwest to northeast quartz line. Yeah.
Yeah. So in areas of quartz, these will be much more obvious and usually larger, easier to pick up on. And so, yeah, there's just a comparison there for people to see. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So again, it looks like someone stuck a sphere of energy in the middle of that photograph, because of the way that the light's refracting around it. For those who can't see it, don't worry. It gets more obvious with time when you pick them up. And, some people pick these things up easier than others. This one's beautiful. This is something that a course member shared with me, and she was kind enough to let me share it again. So this is a really good example. So I'll show whether it's marked. But what's beautiful about this spot is clearly there's a path right through here, but they could have gone that way and they could have gone over here, but no, they've gone through the trees because there's already a path there. It's already a path of least resistance. So that's why it goes through. But oh my God, what a fantastic example.
So this is what you were showing too, that the natural walking paths, a lot of these bush tracks will just follow the lays anyway, because they've been marked out.
Yeah, because the plants and trees try to avoid them. Kangaroos use them. And so, it's just this, and, people aren't stupid. They follow where the kangaroos go because you can see the tracks. And yeah, it's just, so a lot of the streets that we walk on, a lot of the roads that we drive down, you can see too the way that the trees kind of grow around it. Not every tree, not every lane or road, but you can see it when you're driving as well. You can see the big where it's followed a large lay, particularly in areas that are really forested, because it takes a lot of work to take trees out to put a road in. So of course you're going to go to the spot that's already got this meandering path through it.
Can I interject just around the kangaroo thing? It's just reminded me of something else. When I was in Cooper Pedy, I asked one of the original guys there, what's the story with the opals? And he said that it was something like the kangaroo, don't quote me on, but it was something like the kangaroo and the dingo had a fight, and the kangaroo killed the dingo, and the opal is the blood that flowed the whole way along. So it's almost, so I'd imagine that the lines would follow the opal lines too, which would make sense.
Wow, wouldn't that be amazing to check that out?
That the kangaroo followed, yeah.
I would have to look around the Cooper Pedy area then. That would be really interesting. That would be frustrating for me though too, because there's not as many trees and plants in that area. But what's really interesting is I'm finding grass can belie them as well. So if you look at grass, long, large grassy areas, you can see them on the grass too, because of, again, the light refraction. They make themselves obvious. They also seem to be more clear. A course member shared a picture the other day that just blew my mind. And it was gorgeous because she's like, is this one? And it's like, oh yeah, you've got like one of the best examples I've ever seen. And it was either sunrise or sunset, and it had really highlighted it on the grass or on the sort of the ground cover there. It's just so obvious. It's beautiful. Okay, so this is another course member, friend as well. So you can see this one here. Can you see the way the light's refracting around? And this is a really good example because she shows it from both ends. So sorry, I'll go back. So that's where it's marked, and there's a comparison in a minute, so don't stress. But can you see how the big one's here? So
Oh yeah.
isn't
Oh
that
yeah.
really cool? So it's actually over a water source. So the dogs run over a bridge.
Mm.
So there's you can see the lay goes along the path that it's on, but as it goes over the bridge, either there's a lake following the water, which does happen, or the water has made the lay expand
Yeah.
in
Right.
frequency. And that could be because of the energy of the water moving. I'm not 100% sure. So that's the original lay from the other end. I've got a comparison here so you can see it. It's
But
just
Rachel, even the shadow of the tree kind of follows um the lay as well, right?
what's so weird. It is so weird. It bends the light. So it bends the light. So where the shadows are falling, it's being bent by a sphere. So it's a sphere of energy. So if you've imagined, if you got yourself a big balloon and put that in that spot, it would have, the light would fall around it in a certain way because it would have its own,
Mm.
I don't know, presence. But I mean, that's such a beautiful example. And this was so gorgeous because this person just shared these photographs in a group of friends. And I said, you're on a ley line. She's like, oh, wow. Yeah, so it's another really good
It's clear.
example.
The top one is clear as day. Yeah.
Isn't it? Isn't it? It's just beautiful. Yeah, I love the dog in there too, having a wonderful time with his
Yeah,
massive
with the stick in its mouth. Loving it.
just so we've
Oh, here
obviously
we
been
go.
talking about the Swift concert quite a bit lately.
Mm.
And this is just blew me away because it's so obviously a ley line. This is what's called a mark tree. So if you do the course, and this is something that Alfred Watkins talked about way before I started talking about it. So there's a ley there depicted very clearly. It's you know, by the by, it might not be something really significant until I show you something else in a moment. But what it's actually showing is the ley line following the stage. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've got this lay going through the stage. Now, if you look at the MCG where that was, it's this massive oculus, like an eye, even to the point where you can see the tear duct here. They've marked it out with the trees. It looks like a friggin' eye. It's not just the iris and the pupil. The stage went to the center. So I would say that the crossing of lays would be pretty much to the center point of the MCG. This is the seating arrangement. So you can see, you know, where she stops, her you know, that's the end of her stage is right in the center. Same for the Accor Stadium in Sydney, seems even more clear in that shot. You can see it even more clearly, and you provided this to me. Thank you very much. Again, another oculus, another eye shape, and the stage went right out to the middle again.
Well,
So
do you think, because you know that whole sporting complex, there's about 6 or 7 different stadiums there in Melbourne, so they're almost like all the smaller lays feeding into the big
yeah,
portal. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if we go back and have a look at that, I haven't got it, you know, from a high enough perspective, but even the Accor as well, there's all, yeah, it's all sort of pointing out the lays coming in. So
Mm.
that would be a really good example of one going in that direction. There's so many circular structures. So with Accor too, there was a lot of circular structures in the space. This is also interesting too. You've got a rising sun motif. You've got this around Adelaide Airport, Ibis Street, a nod to Alexandria, you know, ancient Egypt. And I don't know what this Haslam's marker is, but it's a spiral and it's weird. It's really weird. It's sort of straight lines creating a spiral. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're obviously
What do you
something.
think with the Swift one though too? Because I mean, if the MCG is a portal, which we think it is, so there's a natural portal there, so it makes a lot of sense that they've actually placed a picture of, it's like they're trying to create their own portal. They're trying to use a natural to draw you into that, right, for whatever
Yeah.
their ritual is.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, and that's the thing, you know, where they have these stadiums, what they do in these stadiums is they worship sports people, they worship singers, they worship whoever they put in there. It's a worship space. And so what that does is that funnels a certain kind of energy. Worship is like, oh, I'm not as good as you are. Oh, I'll never be like you. You know, there's women screaming and crying like you showed in the Swift concert. You know, it's bedlam, it's maudlin, it's depressing. They don't seem to be expressing joy. That there's this hysterics.
Yeah.
You know, no one should worship anybody or anything. No worship. Stop worshipping people.
Well,
Um,
I think the record crowd ever at the MCG was Billy Graham. I think I'll have to
oh,
check that. Yeah, because I
well,
used to do that.
isn't that interesting? Wow. Wow. Well, apparently, there were 3 concerts for Madonna at the MCG. I think it was MCG or Acor, one of those. So, and it's the only time that another singer has been at one of those places 3 times. So Swift had been there 3 times too, and it just happened to be an article about Madonna's been there 3 times, or now Swift's been there 3 times, and there's that number 3 again. Very, very powerful number. I wanted to point this one out because this is the Pantheon in Greece, and it is on an old Roman pagan site. And again, another crossing of lays. But what's interesting about that, this sort of starts to move into what we'll be talking about very soon about Australia. So it's an oculus again, an eye shape. And so, sorry, Rome. I get confused because what we're going to be talking about now is Greece, and I've not travelled, obviously, if I'm calling it Greece, but it's on an old Roman pagan site again. So, and again, all of these Roman pagan sites were on the crossing of ley lines. I just thought it was interesting they called it an oculus because of the obsession with the single eye, with the Illuminati, with the Satanists. They're particularly obsessed with the single eye. Okay, and then again, it's all about
Yeah, I mean, oculus. Yeah, oc means eye, right?
yeah, and I like opening. And again, although those 2 stadiums have an I like opening at the top. Yeah. I like opening at the top. So I wanted to show this one because this is another worship space that happens to be circular. This is the Vatican. We know from Max Lowen, and I know multiple survivors of Vatican ritual abuse. This is another one of these dome centers crossing a really powerful ley lines. You've got a river right next to it that's going to magnify that energy. But what happens here is because most of the ley lines and the crossings of leys hovers above the ground, but where you get the really huge dome centers, they go underground. And as we know from Max and others, there are ritual sites. They do rituals underneath the Vatican, deep down, sub-levels of the Vatican. And I believe personally that these lines here are marking the leys as they cross. So there would be 4 leys crossing in this one spot. This obelisk is a commonality in these ley crossing spaces. They want to concentrate the energy into one space, and then they send it upwards. And you've talked about obelisks, at length. It's also got a copper top, which is interesting because that's another way of heightening and focusing energy. Yeah.
So you know how that, like those big portals, especially in those, they're going underground too because they're so big.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to Rome, they'll show all the ruins and stuff. They're all 20 feet underground.
Ah,
They would have been at the base of the ley at some point in time, right?
yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, because it's interesting how some hover above and the really, really big ones. And also it's interesting too that the bigger the ley, the more squashed it becomes. It's not a perfect circle anymore. It becomes sort of a squashed oval. So something to do with the frequency makes them slightly misshapen. This is the Oracle of Delphi. And again, you've got this circular plinth. Now, if you think about it, making a circular plinth in masonry is not easy. So, you've got all these amazing, powerful dome sort of spaces that are on these circular plinths because they're pointing out, they're marking out that portal space. Stonehenge is another great example. They're just everywhere. They're pointing out the circle for a reason. Washington Monument, same thing. So you've got your big obelisk, and I reckon, why would you have so many weird paths? It looks a mess. You'd think if you're going to make a monument like that, you'd make nice, neat, tidy paths.
Yeah.
They're not neat and tidy. Why? Because that's probably where the laser crossing, because it's significant for a different reason. And again, what's lovely here, if you see the way that it bends, where the ley lines go into these portal spaces, they can bend and swirl around. So I thought that was another lovely example, the way that that's bent. And this is supposed to be the throat chakra of the earth, the pyramid of Giza, or the collection of pyramids in Giza. So they are pyramidal shaped, but they also relate to pi, which is a circle, which I thought was lovely. Fits in with my theory beautifully. So getting to Macedon in Victoria. So here we have massive plinth, again, masonry, hard to create. They've made it circular. This big cross is for supposedly as a memorial to the fallen soldiers. Again, another massive sacrifice. From the aerial view, you can actually see a big round circle around it as well. It's like there might be a circular path or something around, or a track, maybe it's a fire track or something, but it marks out a larger portal. And this is really interesting. So it's supposed to mark out north, south, east, and west with these little spots here. I'll show you a little bit more clearly. This is Cameron Drive. The lay is quite obvious. So I'll show it in several pictures now, and it's quite a large one going up to the monument.
Oh, yeah.
And I need to say a big thank you to one of my course members who provided a lot of these photographs. So thank you very much to that wonderful person. You can see again this refraction of light with the shadow creating the
Yeah, I wouldn't have spotted this one straight out, but I can see it now.
So another thing, Walter Kilner, father of Curlian photography, has explained that if you let your eyes go out of focus, you can pick up different aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I think there are different aspects of the EMF that the ley lines show themselves in. So if you let your eyes go out of focus, it's a little more obvious.
Oh no, it's clear now. You can see that the trees buckling around it as well.
Yeah, they're moving around. So, and I've got quite a series of them. I'll try to get through them all pretty quickly. This is just a stock photo I got off the internet. So as you get closer, you can see it more frequently. Now, what's really interesting is this whole area is named after Macedon, or Macedonia. So Macedon was a center of a powerful empire under Philip II and his son Alexander the Great. Now, Alexander the Great, interestingly, was told by Aristotle, where is it? I've got it written here somewhere. Oh, to take control of the major dome centers of the intersecting ley lines back from dark forces. And this was all obviously a very long time ago. So we've got a place named after another place in the world where someone of this magnitude was to take back the dome from dark forces, or take back these intersecting ley lines from dark forces. Wow. And what's really interesting with that story is apparently it ended up being, ended up coming into a dark age because obviously they didn't do it right, or they didn't do it on time, or whatever. Okay, so this is
how have we not worked out? Like, I lived right near there, that Macedon is Macedonia. It's like,
yeah. Oh, and then the number of Greek references is just insane. So, so this is in Woodend, which is right next door to Macedon. Now, I'm sorry, this is going to sound really puerile. I can't help it. Woodend, and look at it. Does it not look like a phallic symbol? I'm sorry to people watching, but I was brought up by
that's my mate's pub in the background. She'll love
really?
it.
Oh my God. Okay, well.
She's going to do your course too.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
this is the clock tower. Now, according to the lovely person who shared these, a lot of these images with me, the clock tower, apparently a Buddhist monk went to Woodend at one stage and said that clock tower is sending all of the energy up and out of the town. So it's very much like an obelisk again, and it's got this little flagpole sticking out of it. I mean, I don't know, that I don't want to go too much into the sexual references, but that's what it looks like to me anyway. Yeah. And I've marked, there's actually a lay going along this road that you can see. Can't really see.
No, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, it keeps disappearing, getting smaller. This is at Cameron Lodge, and this is called the, let's call it, Shrine of the Winds, I think. Yeah, Temple of the Winds. Temple of the Winds. Now, I remember you doing a video not that long ago, and I think I sent you this image, but I couldn't find the reference that I sent it to you for. There was some other place, I think it was near the Yarra, where there was one of these little temple type things, very, very similar. Yeah. So this is at Cameron Lodge. Now, Cameron Lodge is worth about $9.5 million now. And Cameron Lodge actually funded the cross at Macedon. So look a bit closer, you can see gratitude to William Cameron of the Cameron Lodge for this patriotic gift of the cross for, you know, for the fallen soldiers, which again, you know, any war now we realize is just one big mass sacrifice, and the eugenicists taking out a bunch of people, mind you, they take out the strongest, fittest, so it's pretty stupid. So William Cameron was the director of British American Tobacco, which is interesting. So, you know, obviously not someone who's working with integrity as such. He's dead now, so I can say that. So this is the.
Hey, I need to look that up. I'm pretty sure I went to a wedding there. I stayed
Oh,
there.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's very pretty.
Mm.
Beautiful spot. When I first saw Cameron Lodge, I just assumed it must be a Masonic lodge, because you don't hear lodge very often, but I looked into it and it wasn't. So here's your cross. I don't know, I'm not sure why it's got the sword. I haven't seen many crosses with swords on them, so maybe that's a reference to the soldiers, I'm not sure. So this is just off the internet. So that's Cameron Drive coming up to it. Now, you've got this circular plinth, you've got this monolith, this obelisk. Doesn't really matter what shape it is, it's still an obelisk of sorts. Then you've got these stairways that go to nowhere. I mean, these three stairways go nowhere, except when you look at it, you can see they actually mark out the lays. So obviously that lay that we've already seen goes from all the way along Cameron Drive, and it crosses over here. So I've got another one. It's so lovely. I have to keep pointing it out. So this is on the opposite side of that. And you can, and this one's not as clear, but you can see that the lay continues. So hopefully people can see that. And also,
Oh yeah, you can see that. Yeah, the little one inside.
yeah,
That's
the little one's really clear, beautiful. So, and also take note of the Grecian urns. So another nod to Greece. I just think that they're just having a joke behind our backs, because they know that these ley lines are really significant. They've got this big monolith here. It gets freakier when we look at Hanging Rock just down the road. There's another one here. So that one's much more obvious on a small tile, really obvious actually on a small tile. So I won't jump out, because I might not be able to get back in and work out what I'm doing with this. But this is another spot, another one of these stairways to nowhere, goes into another spot here. Hang on. Go back, because that one's really obvious too. I think really, really clear.
yep. Yep.
This one's not as clear except on a smaller tile. I won't focus on that one too much. Again, Cameron Drive, obviously showing that one off.
Yeah, just right along the path.
Yeah. So again, you know, path of least resistance. The cross actually points towards Mount Disappointment, which I just thought was interesting. So this is something that's just actually sitting in the spot. The actual cross is covered with Wonderlick terracotta tiles. And for people who follow me, you would know that I was trafficked through tunnels to different bunkers that were originally brick kilns built by the Wonderlick tile factory. So I just, you know, when this friend who did the course pointed that out to me, I was like, oh my God, just a little bit of a connection to me. So we've just been looking at the cross on Mount Macedon. Up here is Hanging Rock. And in between, this is called Straws Lane. And this is a famous road because of a weird magnetic anomaly. And it's interesting because the magnetic anomaly also occurs at the Hanging Rock, because when Peter Weir was doing the movie Picnic at Hanging Rock, a person sort of described that, you know, their watch stopped working when they were near the rock. And there were all these other weird things that happened there. So again, here we go. Here, right here is a race course.
Yeah.
So the race course significance will make sense in a moment. They built it right next to the rock.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've been there. They do a race day once a year on New Year's Day.
Yeah, they sure do. This is Straws Lane. And you can see,
wow.
now this is one of the more significant lays because again, it's squashed. So I'll just go backwards and forwards so people can see it. It's quite obvious at the end there. You can see it quite clearly. And again, thank you to the course member who provided a lot of these photographs. Now, this is off the internet. Now, hang on. I haven't got the sound going. The sound's...
Oh, this is that spot where the car... Yeah. Is that where it is? I always wondered where that was. Oh
And
shit! Oh, someone was telling me to go there years ago. I didn't know this. Wow.
So you got Mount Macedon with this massive cross on a dome center at one end. You've got Picnic Rock at the other, and then you've got this shit going on in between. Okay, now there's a child in this video, but I'm showing it because it's already on the internet. So I really deliberated whether or not I should show this because there's actually a child in it, but I think it's old anyway.
Yeah.
Hopefully the kid's grown up. So this is what happens. it goes uphill. This person's putting the car in neutral and it's going uphill.
Yeah.
That way. I was going back.
Yeah, I've heard of this place, Rachel, and I knew it was around there, but I didn't know where. Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that's cute because the dad's saying to the kid, because the kid's like, "What's going on? I'll stop it now so we don't see the kid." So, you know, and the dad's saying, the kid's saying, why is it going backwards? And the dad's
So
going,
how do you explain that, Rachel? Why is it doing that?
It's interesting. If you look on the internet, they say, "Oh no, it's the way that the hills, it's the way the hills are pointing makes you think that's happening." Oh, what a load of rubbish. You could see it plain as day. It's going uphill. It's so ridiculous. So I would say, well, it actually, as we go into the Picnic Rock story, you'll have a bit better understanding. There's like a time trap or something going on in that space. It's not working with the physical laws that we would normally expect. So that's the only way. And it's a magnetic anomaly. So perhaps the magnetism is pulling the metal car uphill. Yeah, there's a lot of iron in cars, so it could be that too. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So another nod to Greece. So Mount Diogenes is what Hanging Rock used to be called. And that's, you know, it had a different name before that, obviously, because the original people had a different name for it. So Diogenes was a Greek philosopher, which is another really interesting thing. So Aristotle, a philosopher, told Alexander the Great to take back the dome centers. We've got another nod to another Greek philosopher in the location name. So now I'm sorry, I'm going to read through this because it is so significant. So this is about Joan Lindsay's Picnic at Hanging Rock story. And there is just, for those who understand SRA and MK Ultra, this is so significant it has to be read out. So bear with me while I read it, guys. So it begins with a brief foreword stating that whether the novel is a fact or fiction, the readers must decide for themselves. So that's actually a quote from Joan Lindsay, the writer. At Appleyard College, a private boarding school for upper-class girls near Mount Macedon, Victoria, a picnic is being planned for the students under the supervision of Mrs. Appleyard, the school's headmistress. The picnic entails a trip to Hanging Rock on St. Valentine's Day in 1900. And just pay attention to the relationship to the Alice in Wonderland tale. One of the students, Sarah, who's in trouble with Mrs. Appleyard, is not allowed to go. Sarah's close friend Miranda goes without her. When they arrive, the students relax and eat lunch. Afterward, Miranda goes to climb the monolith with classmates Edith, Irma, and Marion, despite being forbidden to do so. The girls' mathematics teacher, Greta McGraw, follows behind them separately. Miranda, Marion, and Irma climb still higher in a trance-like state, while Edith flees in terror. She returns to the picnic in hysterics, disoriented and with no memory of what occurred. Sounds very much like what happens in a satanic ritual or a MK Ultra abuse session. Miss McGraw is also nowhere to be accounted for except for being seen by Edith, who passed her ascending the rock in her underwear. Okay. The school scours the rock in search of the three girls and their teacher, but that they are not found. The disappearances provoke much local concern and international sensation, with rape, abduction, and murder being assumed as possible explanations. Several organised searches of the picnic grounds and the area surrounding the rock itself turn up nothing. Meanwhile, the students, teachers, and staff of the college, as well as members of the community, grapple with the riddle-like events. Mike Fitzhubert, an Englishman who was picnicking at the grounds the same day, embarks on a private search of the rock and discovers Irma unconscious and on the verge of death. When he fails to return from his search, he is found in an unexplained daze, sitting at the rock with Irma, by his friend and uncle's coachman, Albert Crundle. The disappearances provoked much local concern and international sensation. International sensation, okay, pay attention to that too, with rape, abduction and murder being assumed as probable explanations. Oh, sorry, I've already read that bit. So concerned parents begin withdrawing their daughters from the prestigious college, prompting various staff to leave. The college's handyman and maid quit their jobs, and the French instructor, Mademoiselle, Mademoiselle Diane de Poitiers announces that she'll be getting married and leaving the college as well. A junior governess at the college, Dora Lumley, also leaves with her brother Reg, only for both to be killed in a hotel fire. And there are hotel fires that have occurred in the area. Amidst the unrest both in and around the college, Sarah vanishes, only to be found days later, having apparently committed suicide, and her body being found directly beneath the school's tower, with her head crushed beyond recognition. Mrs. Appleyard, distraught over the events that have occurred, kills herself by jumping from a peak on Hanging Rock. In a pseudo-historical afterword, purportedly extracted from a 1913 Melbourne newspaper article, it is written that both the college and the Woodend police station, where records of the investigation were kept, were destroyed by a bushfire in the summer of 1901. In 1903, rabbit hunters came across a lone piece of frilled calico at the rock, believed to have been part of the dress of the governess, Miss McGraw, but neither she nor the girls were ever found. Now, it's interesting they pointed out rabbit hunters, if you look at the Alice in Wonderland story. So this is the excised final chapter of the book. Now, it's really interesting the way it's written. It's all like actual fact. They're not talking about, like, this is a historical, you know, it's a story. They're talking about it like it's fact. And that's the big thing around this story. Joan Lindsay never said that it wasn't factual. She never said it was a story. She said it was up to people to make it their own decision about whether or not it was real.
Yeah.
So according to her editor, Sandra Forbes, Lindsay's original draft of the novel included a final chapter in which the mystery was resolved. At her editor's suggestion, Lindsay removed it prior to publication. Chapter 18, 3 sixes 18, as it is known, was published posthumously as a standalone book in 1987 as The Secret of Hanging Rock by Angus and Robertson. The chapter opens with Edith fleeing back to the picnic area, while Miranda, Irma, and Marion push on. Each girl begins to experience dizziness and feel as if she is being pulled from the inside out. A woman suddenly appears climbing the rock in her underwear, shouting "through," and then faints. The woman is not referenced by name and is apparently a stranger to the girls, yet the narration suggests she is Miss McGraw. Miranda loosens the woman's corset to help revive her. Afterwards, the girls remove their own corsets and throw them off the cliff. Not sure what that's about. The recovered woman points out that the corsets appear to hover in midair as if stuck in time. So that's very much like Alice falling down the rabbit hole, because you know, a lot of that was all about her skirt billowing up around her, and that they cast no shadows, which is interesting. I'll keep talking about the shadows with the ley lines. She and the girls continue together. The girls then encounter what is described as a hole in space, Alice in Wonderland again, by which they physically enter a crack in the rock following a lizard. The unnamed woman disappears into the rock. I mean, it might as well have been a rabbit. Marion follows her, then Miranda, but when Irma's turn comes, a balanced boulder, which is the hanging rock, slowly tilts and blocks the way. The chapter ends with Irma tearing and beating at the gritty face of the boulder with her bare hands. The missing material amounts to about 12 pages. Okay, so I think that's about as interesting as it gets. Oh, so sorry, apart from the last bit where it says that the hole in space suggests that the girls have encountered some sort of time warp, which is compatible with Lindsay's fascination with an emphasis on clocks and time in the novel. And again, when Peter Weir went back there was a complaint by one of the people who were in the either an actor or someone involved with the shoot that said that their watch stopped, which is another Alice in Wonderland reference, looking at the watch. So this is one of the last bits that I'm going to read. So sorry, it's a lot of reading. So this is the conception, and this is amazing. Lindsay claimed to have written the novel based on an idea she had in a dream. So MK Ultra much. In a 2017 article, The Age, it was noted the dream had centered on a summer picnic at a place called Hanging Rock, which Joan knew well from her childhood holidays. Joan told Ray, her housekeeper, that the dream had felt so real that when she awoke at 7:30 a.m., she could still feel the hot summer breeze blowing through the gum trees and she could still hear the peals of laughter and conversation of the people she'd imagined, and their gaiety and lightness of spirit as they set out on their joyful picnic expedition. I think she actually witnessed something. I really do. According to her housekeeper at the time, the events of the novel were dreamt by Lindsay successively. Several years after the publication of the novel, Lindsay would recount the experience of writing it as such. This is a quote from her. "Picnic at Hanging Rock really was an experience to write because I was just impossible when I was writing it. I just sort of thought about it all night, and in the morning I would go straight up and sit on the floor, papers all around me, and just write like a demon." Very interesting description. The novel was written over a total of 2 weeks at Lindsay's home in Mulberry Hill. She wrote a book in 2 weeks.
I'm just mine's saying my disk base is run out recording. That's all right. You're recording, are you?
Yeah, I'm recording. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
recording.
all
Cool. All right. Okay, so she did it in 2 weeks. She recalled the painting at the Hanging Rock by William Ford, which had hung in her husband Darrell's office at the National Gallery of Victoria, and chose to incorporate it into the title as it was simple and pretty and belied the horrors hidden within. So why is she talking about horrors being hidden within? I mean, she's experienced something, this woman. She's dead now, so, I can talk about it. In an interview after Lindsay's death, academic Terence O'Neill, who had befriended Lindsay, remarked the supernatural elements of the novel. It was clear that Joan was interested in spiritualism and longed for some spiritual dimension in her life, but she didn't feel safe bringing that side of her out in front of her husband. So I think she channeled it into her writing. I know she was very interested in Arthur Conan Doyle and his belief in and theories about spiritualism, nature, and the existence of spirits. So then we get to this image. And when I first saw it, my mind just went immediately, oh, Alice in Wonderland. But it's not. It's a statue of the fictional Miranda. So, I mean, there's just so many correlations. It just sounds like this poor Lindsay woman, Joan Lindsay, must have gone through the MK program. And some of that will make more sense in a minute.
So where's this statue?
So this is at the Hanging Rock Visitors Centre.
Okay.
So they've actually put it in there. So when asked in a 1974 interview about whether or not the novel was based in truth, Lindsay responded, "Well, it was written as a mystery and remains a mystery. If you can draw your own conclusions, that's fine, but I don't think that it matters. I wrote that book as a sort of atmosphere of a place, and it was like dropping a stone into the water. I felt that story, if you could call it a story, that the thing that happened on St. Valentine's Day went on spreading out and out and out in circles." So there's another circle reference.
Yeah.
The unresolved mystery of the disappearances in the novel aroused so much lasting public interest that in 1980, a book of hypothetical solutions was released, and that was called The Murders at Hanging Rock. So just a really, really interesting story if you then take into account what I have been told by multiple sources, that there was a historical satanic ring operating in the Woodend, Macedon and Dalesford area. And it's not just one report, I've had multiple. And the way that this has come to me, this information, is just quite uncanny, because I shared some of this information in a particular forum and someone came forward to me to tell me about this and then someone else then followed that up. So, I'm saying it's historical. I don't know that it's still going on. But the report to me was that important people, doctors, dentists, police, head of a school, and a member of the church were all involved in the satanic ring in this area. So you've got all the elements of a satanic base, including witnesses have come forward. So now, if you had a child trafficking hub and you wanted to bring people there, you'd have to find an event. So what would you do? You would create a race course. And so one of the first times they did the race there, they had 5,000 people go and stay. That Cameron Lodge was created for people to stay in. And it's, it's rich. So again, you've got some, they're always held around specific dates as well, New Year's Day and Easter. So
yeah, I think they still do it. Like, because I lived around the area. It's a big event, and
wow.
I told you, I went to Bruce Springsteen out there as well.
Oh,
so
really?
There's only been a handful of different concerts out there, but that was a big one. Bruce
Hey,
Springsteen
little
was.
girl, is your daddy home? Did he go and leave you all alone? Oh no, I got a strange desire.
You're a good
That's
singer, Rach.
no, I'm not. I couldn't do that. Always hated that man for no apparent reason. Okay, so yeah, so you've got all these different elements that are bringing in people in that area. And again, I'm saying this is historical. The allegations that I've heard are historical. I'm not saying it's happening now. But there's something that needs to be pointed out at the end of this. So this is the first edition cover. I cannot tell you how many MK Ultra survivors that I know who've made paintings that look exactly like this, of a fractured face, a fractured different elements, someone who's been altered.
Rachel, that just says it all. I never knew that. Wow. I mean,
Isn't that freaky?
So many music videos. That's the most common. It's one of the
That's
most common ones, isn't it? Like
it
the
just,
shadow.
it just stands out like nothing else. It's like, oh my gosh, what did this poor woman go through?
And it's
Yeah.
written in the font of that like Dave
Psychedelic.
McCow, Laurel Canyon, CIA.
Yeah, isn't it? Oh my God. I
Yeah,
didn't
it's the
even
exact
notice that.
same font.
So from memory, it came out in 67. So that could also be a reason for the font, but it's weird. Okay, so now, interestingly, so the school that the girls supposedly came from in the story is now called Braemar College. Now, Dame Elizabeth Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch's mother, went to that college, and part of it's named after her. This is Braemar College. I don't know if you see some similarities there, just somewhere in Bendigo.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. There's also an
Wow,
obvious.
that's crazy. It's not a very common design, is it? Like,
No, it's not a common design. So again, there's a ley line going down the street that's kind of obvious. So there's Fortuna.
yeah.
And here's
Yeah, well,
Braemar.
it's more that Eastern European kind of style, isn't it?
It is.
Like central to Eastern Europe,
What was it called? French. It was some sort of French. I've got the guy's name. Oh, built by Frenchman Louis Baldini, and it was Victorian free classical architectural style. But I mean, they're so similar. It's ridiculous. To the point of the portals. Now the little portal windows. We discussed that in our dig on Fortuna, and that can be a nod to. And this is a girls' school too. It can be a nod to a ship in dry dock, because it's like a nautical window. And again, ships in dry dock, if you commit pedophilia on a ship, even in dry dock, even on land, it's considered under maritime law legal. So again, it's just a nod to that. I believe it's a nod to the maritime law, because it's a weird thing. Again, circles in masonry. Why? But it could be related to the fact that there's a bloody ley line down the street. But anyway, I digress. So this is the actual, this is a ring of rock at the top of Hanging Rock. And it's really interesting because there's some weird formation in here, which looks to me like a skull, and I've marked it. Now, by the by, nothing really major, except that to me, if there was going to be any kind of ritual sacrificial activity, it would be in this spot. I've got a fascination with pareidolia and faces and things like that in rocks and things, but I'm not the only one who has this interest, because this news.com article talks about the Hanging Rock story. And again, talking about Diogenes, but there was something in here that I wanted to share that was really interesting. Baffling and unexplained incidents happen close to the rock. That rare volcanic formation is it's got a particular name, but it also means nipple in French, which I know that's puerile, but again, you've got a bunch of Satanists that are obsessed with sex, and when they have these sorts of names in areas, it's for a reason.
UFO.
Yeah, UFOs. Yeah. So and the Aboriginal people in the area also believe that okay, she reckons that they're well known. They were well known to her. It's really interesting. It did have a mystical power. They protected that rock. So the original people, the Kulin people, were the custodians of that area. And very, very sadly, they were driven off by the pastoralists that didn't want them there, stole their land. Now, in that news.com article, they've also shown one of the faces on the rocks. So,
Yeah.
so it's not just me who's fascinated by these things. Now, who owns news.com? Rupert Murdoch. So did Mummy tell him some stories, I think? I don't know, but I just thought it was an interesting correlation. They've got that article and he happens to own that paper. This is the racetrack. So this is actually standing on the rock. This is how close the racetrack is. And it's from a different angle. This is really interesting because this is the actual hanging rock. And there's a lay. So again, many thanks to the individual who gave me these photographs.
Oh, wow, that's unreal. Oh, wow.
Isn't it? So,
wow, that's clear as day.
isn't it? So,
you don't
and
need
from a
the
different
rest.
angle. So it's in 2 photographs. So I don't know why there would be that cleft there. Maybe the magnetism, the energy, or it's just a coincidence that it happens to be in the same spot. Yeah, I just wanted to give a nod to the funding of that rock is purely from events. So they don't get much funding from the government. They get funding from events that are staged. So, you know, what you're talking about, you know, perhaps the concert that you went to was funding for the rock as well, which is odd. It just seems odd to me that that would be the case. This is a nod to the original inhabitants. So the majority of the surviving Kulin people were rounded up and sent to Corranderk Aboriginal Station, which is a concentration camp, basically. You hear Aboriginal Station, you're talking a concentration camp near Hillsville, which I thought that was a bit ironic and cruel, as a result of conflict with the pastoralists. Well, the conflict was that they were the custodians of that land and it was being mistreated, obviously. Yeah, just infuriating.
Well, I have spoke to the elder from that area, and yeah, he said there's not many of them left now. Some of them have come back, but he did say Healesville and Gippsland, and even up to Echuca. I think he said that the tribal story was Mount Franklin, and it might have been Macedon as well. They were like 2 spirits, and they had a war. That was like the volcanoes going off.
Wow.
I think Mount Franklin's the other significant one, because he said there was mass slaughters there as well.
Well, I'm gonna have to look that up now.
Well, Mount Franklin, it was all clear, and they planted all European trees on it that are probably 100 years old now.
Okay, yeah. So the reason I've got this at the end, and I'm not advocating for Operation Underground Railroad, that's not what I'm doing here. I'm pointing out that I can't really see because of that, because this thing down the bottom, but one thing that they did point out was the red door phenomenon. So there's this video that went out about that they went through this red door and they found this tunnel, and there was child trafficking going on with the red door. Now, the red door can also be a symbol of Chinese good luck. So, but the reason that I've shared this is, oh, sorry, there you go. So they're talking about this red door and there's children behind them, and that there are red doors everywhere throughout the world, and there's child trafficking going on if you see a lot of red doors. Now, again, I am countering that the allegations that I've heard of this area, the Macedon Woodend area, Dalesford, are historical. But what is really interesting is that there are quite a few businesses, including a government business in the area that I've just mentioned, that have red doors. And I just find that very concerning, because I've had these allegations told to me, multiple, and there are also those doors. I am not saying in any way that any of those businesses are involved in that. These are historical allegations, but I want to know why the red doors. Why are there multiple businesses with the red doors? It's just really very odd. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Well, I just Googled then, because I remember when I was teaching, we were working with different welfare people, and they coordinated to put them all into one area, and they called it Red Door Disability. Yeah, I just looked that up there. And actually, the first picture, I've just typed it in, and it's got an article, Bendigo Red Door, and it's got the Masonic checkerboard floors. But I'll look at that later.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, Rachel, that's I mean, it's phenomenal. A lot of that stuff. I think find it so interesting the nod to Europe and particularly Greece, ancient Greece, right?
Yeah, it's obviously they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
They're pointing it
Yeah.
out for a reason. And you know that the red door thing is significant to me as well, because I did grow up in a house that had tunnels and it's now got a red door. So, I'm not saying that it's still going on in that area, but the allegations that I heard were significant. And I mean, looking at Joan Lindsay's work, I mean, for heaven's sake, that woman's describing seeing something horrific. In some of the stories that I heard, or the accounts, they were chasing after a rabbit, and they went up on
So
the.
is she in those writings? So it's where her talking about why she wrote it. She seems quite. I mean, she seems quite lucid as to, like, maybe she doesn't want to tell, or do you think she's dissociative, or she was writing repressed memories? Like, how do you take that coming
I
from
think
your
it's a
experience?
combination of repressed memories, and the way that it all came out sounds to me like someone who's going through a memory retrieval and they're writing it all out in a 2-week period. That's what people do when they're remembering their stuff. It's just like this flood of information. You've got to get it out, otherwise you go crazy.
But they obviously kind of enjoyed that story coming out too, because it became such a popular. It's be one of the most popular Australian books ever, wouldn't it?
So if you had a trafficking syndicate and you wanted to bring people to the area, what would you do? You would produce a story like that produced a movie that brought all those people to that area. And the people that are in the know, that know the symbols, like we've just discussed,
Yeah,
they would know, oh, fresh meat, I can go there and get whatever I need. So I think it was an advertisement campaign. That's
I'll have to check too, because I've been to Hanging Rock a few times, and I'm pretty sure I'll have to check it, but I'm pretty sure the park fully closes at night. You are not allowed to.
heard that.
I'll have to check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't. There's no entry. You actually have to go through a gate. Like, they give you a ticket, and you have to go through a boom gate to get just to drive even near the park. And yeah, it's fully shut at night.
Yeah. So, it'd be really interesting to see what happens in those areas on specific dates, important dates. What are they doing there? Yeah. So when I looked at it, it's like, my God, I've got to get this out there, because like I said, I believe it's all historical, but just in case, it needs to be known. And those people that had been abused, if this is all correct, there was a ring operating there and all the simp signs are there, those people who experienced that need a voice, someone to speak about it publicly so that they don't look so crazy.
I think it's good you're doing this too, because I know, like, even with the information you've found, that there's always someone that's going to pop up with something else that we haven't thought of, or that we didn't know, right? So
yeah,
it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what else would you like to share? I'm still running on 30% battery, Rachel. We could talk for another.
Oh my God, I'm amazed at what you managed to get done, Dylan. It's pretty impressive. Well, I think that was probably about it, Dylan. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there, and yeah, just hopefully those people who had those experiences in that area will feel vindicated.
Yeah. Just with the lays again too, did you want to encourage or tell people how they can impact these ley lines in a positive way that have been kind of taken over and used for negative reasons? So do you want to explain, like, how people can interact with them within that, and probably the importance of doing it in your local area?
I think
because everyone's kind of where they need to be, right? So maybe that is why you need to be where you are, because you're energetically connected with certain lays. And yeah, anyway, so
which is so true. So if you're in an area that you love, you're probably there for this particular work. If you're interested in ley lines and you're psychic, or you've got interest in otherworldly experiences, then you're probably in that location for a reason. So the suggestion is, take some of what I've shown here. Again, let your eyes go out of focus when you go into nature, so that you'll see the lays. I've got a beautiful friend that I go for walks with, Alex, who feels them before I see them. She'll feel them. It's like, stop, go take some photos. I'll take some photos. Usually For some reason on a CCD, it's more obvious. So you take a photograph, it sort of shows up that much more, something to do with the EMFs being easily taken on the photo. But you can see them in nature too, obviously. You saw them before you did your walk and talk and showed them. So go out, have a look, see if you can find one. And when you get into the lay, again, use energetic protection. So do some sort of protective modality, whatever that is, because you can encounter dark entities in these spaces. Not all the time. Most of them are lovely, but sometimes you can. So use some sort of protective modality, even if it's just a prayer of protection, and go in there and use song. You can sing, or you could, as long as it's harmonious, you could take in a tuning fork, 432 hertz, 528 hertz. There's some of the better frequencies to take in there and just tap it. Take in music that's 432 hertz or 528 hertz or really positive frequency. I've got a friend who's trying to put together a song for that. So that's something that people will be able to take in or be able to use the lyrics at least and sing their own version of into the lays. And with the intent of clearing and cleansing and putting positive, loving energy into the lay. Because we've had these Satanists hide the existence of the ley lines, co-opt the major portal spaces and do horrific things in those spaces for millennia. And what we need to do, and all we need is a critical number of people to do it, go in there and turn it around, change it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many years or how many thousands of years they've been doing it, we can change it with just a certain number of people doing it at the same time or over a certain period of time. And we've also come to the end of this cycle. You know, we're at the end of this 25,000 year cycle, going into 1,000 years of what I believe is going to be a golden age, a very positive age. This is the flip. This is the energetic flip. We don't need weapons. We don't need wars. We can win this with energy and frequency and intent. So just go out, find one, take a guitar in there, take some music in there, play something, you know. I would avoid minor chords. I would go for major chords. Minor chords are depressing. We want positive, happy energy going in. Yeah, loving energy.
It made me think about in Bendigo, actually, right where that that lay is. I remember people used to stack quartzes. You know, you see that in the bush sometimes. And then I found out apparently there was a group of people, but it's not a really nice bit of, you know, because people usually do it around waterfalls or that, but it's just like this dirty old dry bush. And yeah, I remember they used to do them around there.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, because they probably can feel it. And so when you do something like and create a little monolith of energy of quartz like that with the intent of changing the energy, it's a focus. And this is the other thing that people don't realize. I used to run around all the time with crystals and put them in the bush, not knowing what I was doing until I had a download some years later. When you touch something, when you hold something in your hand, especially a natural substance, it gets imbued with your energy. It's a bit like taking a magnet to a lodestone and magnetizing it. Or you know, something with iron in it and magnetizing it. You're imbuing it with your energy and you're changing its frequency. It also gets your DNA on it. And when you then place it somewhere, you can remotely connect to that and energize and activate it. And so the proof of that is in the fact that, you know, all these kings, Egyptians, you know, people created mummies over millennia. It's not because they wanted to leave a corpse behind that wouldn't rot. And you think, why would they do that? It's because the DNA in that mummy acts as a portal. So that the soul of that individual can come in and out of the dimension like a doorway. That's the only reason why they do it. So our DNA is so powerful, it's a doorway. So this is why, you know, when you have somebody who has passed away, you take their ring or something to a psychic and you get the psychic to hold on to it. The psychic can pick up through psychometry who owned it, what the personality was like, all of that information.
Printed there forever.
Yeah.
Well, it tells me too that, you know, you spoke about these lines coming up in the last few years. So that just tells me there's human evolution going on. If you look at it symbiotically, it's an inevitable thing. Yeah. So, and it's cool because everyone can impact the lays, right? It's not sitting around waiting for government or waiting for someone else to do it. It's like something you can directly do. So, I mean, I need to look at doing it more now. I think
stuff waiting around for a savior. This is something, again, no weapons, no wars required. We just go out there and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and you can do it individually. If you not want someone who wants to hang out with a whole group of people and do it in a team, but go and do it on your own. It's just as powerful.
do you remember I told you, Rach, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was like possessed at going around putting these bloody crystals in the ground. I don't know why I was doing it. And
Yeah.
actually, the spot where I did it the most was actually right near Mount Franklin, a place called Vaughan Springs, which I love. I just love that area. But yeah, and then I did like this regression therapy, and it was telling me that my first incarnation on Earth was to like control the energy of the rocks and like create the rock formation.
Oh, you're
Just
kidding me.
I don't know if it's true or not, but it was kind of
Wow.
weird. And then I was like, oh, that makes sense why I'm going around chucking these rocks everywhere in the ground for no reason. I don't know what I'm doing, but it kind of feels right.
Well, you're creating a grid.
Yeah, well,
A
that's
grid
what it felt
that
like.
you can
Yeah.
connect to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping now that I can ask people on my behalf, because I don't do a lot of traveling. They're going out to these sacred sites, put a crystal in the ground, so that you can remotely tap in from a distance at any time to put that beautiful loving energy in and that intent for freedom for humanity, freedom for the world, freedom from all these dark 1% trying to control us all the time.
I like the relationship with the lays too, because it's both that you can impact them and put your energy in, but then you can also download information that's sitting within the lines as well forever. So I like that. It's like it's back and forward.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla was a big proponent for that, that you can tap into that universal energy. And he wasn't just doing it as an energetic source to fire up his towers. He knew it was universal consciousness, that you could get that information through that. So again, if you want to go and meditate, that's a great place to go and do it using energetic protection, of course. But if you want to learn how to meditate successfully and communicate with the spirit guides, that would be the place to do it. So you just got to know how to find them, and it's not that hard. It really is not hard.
Where was that? Where was that big tower that he had? Was it? I think it was just outside New York City. I think it was in New York State.
I
Is that
think it
right?
was. Yeah, Wardenclyffe. I think you're right. Yeah.
Mm. All right. Well, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's good.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll put in. Did you want me to chuck in any other links? I'll definitely chuck the one in with Julia if people want to watch that one as well.
Awesome. That'd be great. Yeah.
I'll
That'd
have
be
a bit of a better idea. And then, when's your next available course for people to do?
So I'm still taking people in for the May course, and July as well. So if you're in America or in that time zone, July would be better. But May is perfect for anyone, New Zealand, Australia, Europe. That would work really well for them.
Well, if you send me that as well, and
Awesome.
I'll chuck them in.
Cool.
You'll be booked out for the next couple of years, and then we're all going to be going in, impacting the ley
Yeah.
lines,